Democrats are pushing voting bills tonight amidst a looming Republican filibuster, and Republicans have the votes to block these bills, teeing up another public loss for Biden. It is not how the president wanted to begin this year after his spending bill was blocked and his vaccine or test mandate got struck down by the Supreme Court. Biden's setbacks and the dire mood congealing into something that much of the country appears to now agree on. At this moment, things are not going very well, which made Biden a punchline on the new SNL.
I'll come back for all of you, I promise. Right after I pass the Build Back Better bill.
Dude, even in the real universe, that thing's not passing.
It's true. Spider-Man has his villains. I have Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema.
What about the other problems facing America, like inflation?
Spider-Man. You have to wear a mask in a restaurant for the 10 feet until you sit down. Then you take it off for the whole meal. Unless you gotta go to the bathroom. Then you gotta put it back on. Is it COVID in the bathroom? How does any of it make sense?
That's the mood. Now, no one's saying it's all the president's fault. Year 3 of COVID is driving a dour and exhausted national mood. There are New York Times columnists asking what Biden's thinking, questioning this strategy of this staggering presidency. Liberal Maureen Dowd demanding more from an administration she largely supports, while liberal Jonathan Chait says Biden and Democrats have to rethink COVID safety trade-offs, like how ongoing school closures impact children and working families when it's not year 1 anymore and the pandemic sometimes feels like it has no end in sight. Other Democrats have a different view, insisting the issue is not just those problems, but there's a vacuum where then those problems and certain senatorial holdouts tend to get all the outsized attention. James Carville says Democrats are just too whiny. They should gloat more about Biden's economic wins so far. Now, Chuck Schumer had set MLK Day yesterday as a deadline for the voting rights debate to create public pressure on those holdouts, Manchin and Sinema. Schumer then backed down from that hardball deadline, which spared either of those senators the tough vote they were promised yesterday. This was even after Sinema punked Schumer and Biden with that speech, timed to undercut the president's special visit to the Senate. Now, for his part, Senator Schumer says his delayed vote will still put everyone on record.
And make no mistake about it, using Dr. King as an inspiration, Democrats will continue to fight on this issue until we succeed. And make no mistake about it, using Dr. King as an inspiration, Democrats will continue to fight on this issue until we succeed.
Maybe. But this week, that fight is playing out as another slow-motion loss, with Democrats again having to explain why, even though they are in power, it doesn't always feel like they're in charge. Where do we go from here with a lot of winter left? Eugene Robinson and Che Komanduri are with us when we're back in 60. We're back with the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson, and Obama campaign veteran Che Komanduri. I walked through some of it, Che. Your response to this concern that it looks like Democrats are in power but not in charge?
Well, you know, John McCain liked to gleefully say that it's always darkest before it's pitch black. Well, that's basically where we as Democrats are right now. It's really dark. It's kind of the part of the movie where Rocky's on the mat. This is the part of the movie where Gary Cooper in High Noon is abandoned by the whole town. It is very, very bleak for Democrats. But the thing that I remind myself, and I think a lot of people have to remember, is I remember when the ACA was pronounced dead in D.C. a number of times, most notably after Scott Brown won his victory in Massachusetts. People in D.C. were like, oh, the ACA is dead. And Democrats pulled it together. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Harry Reid, all of them pulled it together and made it happen. So I think we're in very much the same position. There is still a deal to be had there. It may not be what progressives want, but I do think that there is still a possibility that, you know, if we can give Joe Manchin pretty much what he wants on Build Back Better. I know people hate to hear that, but I think that's a possibility. Maybe what they want on filibuster reform, maybe reaching out to Romney and Collins to at least allow voting rights to come to a vote. I think those are all possibilities, and I think it's a tremendous necessity that we get something done. Doing nothing is an impossibility. It is something we cannot allow.
Yeah, and Gene, I'll read a little more from one of those items I quoted, Maureen Dowd saying that Biden fancied himself another master of the Senate. Unfortunately, she writes he was thinking of the Senate of '84. McConnell, the Einstein of obstruction, astonishingly successful in ruining the agenda. And then she writes, Schumer's such a pushover, he backed down from his promise of a voting rights showdown by MLK Day because winter weather threatened. Gene?
Well, look, I hope Democrats use this week as kind of an exorcism, right? And to get all this sort of the sort of evil aura off of them, because this isn't bleak. Bleak was 2017, right? That was bleak. That felt bleak for Democrats. Democrats have control of the White House and of the House of Representatives and of the Senate, but it's a 50-50 Senate. And the problem is not just Manchin and Sinema, it's the 50 Republicans who will block everything Democrats are trying to do. And so, that is the reality, and trying to wish it to be different isn't going to get anybody anywhere. So Democrats need to take stock and to trumpet what they have already done, because Mitch McConnell hasn't stopped the whole Biden agenda. There are a lot of things that the administration's been able to do that they ought to talk about. And second, they ought to get, Build Back Better. I think it was a great package. It's not going through as a huge package, so they can pick off bits and pieces. Romney is very interested in the child tax credit. His proposal on that is actually probably more progressive than Joe Manchin's. But, if there are ways to get pieces of it passed, that is the only sensible thing to do at this point, because as a big bill, it's just not happening. I wish it were. It's not happening.
Yeah, and you make that fair point, and we covered some of this last night, saying it's still Republicans this week are the ones blocking even an up or down vote on the voting rights bill. So that's the truth. That's the bulk of it, right? You can't only focus on a couple random senators, and yet Sinema, from what we could tell, did a meeting. Manchin and Sinema did a meeting with Biden. There's all this talk about politics and hardball and LBJ era, and she seems to be getting away with it. We dug up an example here that Che Komanduri mentioned from The Wire, which is a different style of leadership perhaps than Biden, where you need to be not only loved but feared. Take a look.
Omar. Yeah. Omar coming, yo. Omar coming, yo. Omar coming. Come on. Get out of here. Omar coming. I said Omar coming. Somebody is coming now. Come on, let's go. Yeah.
We will mention, Che, Barack Obama himself said that was his favorite character, although he never endorsed everything that the fictional character did. But why do you think of Omar when you think about Biden and these holdouts? Che?
Because he is the person who understands it's better to be feared than to be loved. And Omar was somebody who maintained his integrity throughout, maintained his persona throughout, and did what needed to be done to achieve his objective. And I think ultimately that is what politics is about. The objective is still doable here. It may not be in the form that progressives hoped a year ago, but it is still doable here. And the cost of doing nothing for Democrats is absolutely dire. Democrats need to have achievements that they can trumpet back to voters. They also need to end what really feels like kind of a Groundhog Day loop of blown legislative deadlines and constant negotiations. This is causing Joe Biden to look weak and ineffective, and it has to end. And if he can just get something done, something passed, it will really change the way that this administration feels and Democrats feel going into the midterm.
So let's compare that to Obama, first to Che and then to Gene, because Barack Obama dealt with the seeds of this, a Tea Party that just wanted to stop him at all costs and had racist leaders in it, just as the Oath Keepers do. I mean, we've been in this for a while, though people think of the Trump era as so acute. But I'm not sure, Che, tell us what you think, that Barack Obama suffered the same immediate perception, particularly in year one, like, okay, does he have his hand on the wheel? Is he respected? There seems to be a gap there, and maybe it has to do with the structural underpinnings of their different support within the party. I don't recall, even with all of the stuff I just mentioned against Obama and the nation, I don't recall any Democrats going at him the way Sinema did Biden.
Well, look, Sinema is sort of an interesting character to say the least. I mean, Joe Manchin is someone who we understand. Donald Trump won his state by 70%. So his opposition, I think, makes some political sense. Sinema does not. And I really am very puzzled by her behavior, particularly in a purple state that is going bluer every single day. I mean, you know, what does she want? I mean, maybe she wants more internships at wineries. I mean, Senator Alex Padilla and Dianne Feinstein, I'm sure, know a lot of great wineries that we have out in California, a wonderful wine industry that Sinema is actually very familiar with and has spent some of her downtime here. So that is a real puzzle, and I think that she is a really unique character in terms of D.C. As far as Obama and Biden and that comparison goes, I do think, and I'm going to say quite bluntly, there is some ageism going on here on the part of the media and on the part of a lot of people. I think that people look at Joe Biden's age, just assume certain things about him that they did not assume about younger men like Barack Obama or Bill Clinton.
Gene?
I think there is some ageism going on. And I recall a lot of stories about Barack Obama and how he was sort of, Mr. Spock. He was too cerebral and not visceral enough, and, too intellectual and not gritty enough to really do politics. He was actually really, really good at politics, and Joe Biden is really good at politics too. But it's a 50-50 Senate. You cannot lose a single vote. And yeah, I've got no idea what's on Kirsten Sinema's mind. She won't talk to anybody. She made that pronouncement that was sort of in your face, in the president's face, in a way that there should be repercussions for her in her political career going forward. And I suspect there will, because that won't be forgotten. That can't be forgotten. But in the meantime, in the short term, she has the vote. She has one of the votes that is necessary, and that's just the facts. So we have to deal with the facts as they are, and then we'll worry later about repercussions for somebody who does what Sinema did, which is just that should be unacceptable to a president, and he should remember that, I think, for a long time.
Well, and we're out of time in this segment, but Gene, we don't do ageism on the beat because we like it old school.
Yes, we do. We do like it old school.
Che, did you get that joke, Che?
I do. I'm very familiar with the term old school. It's something that even classical music, I understand it.
Just a few OGs here, just solving the problems of the world.
You said it. OGs solving problems. We should only be so lucky to aspire to what Gene just put forward as a goal. My thanks to two OGs, Eugene Robinson and Komanduri. I will tell everyone coming up